Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. And the most important updates are coming from the United States of America, and according to information we have, House advances a 95 billion aid package for Ukraine, Israel and other US allies, teeing up final votes this weekend. The House of Representatives approved a bill to help Ukraine and US foreign allies, ABC reports. The bill was supported by a majority of votes, 316 in favor and 94 against. The procedure allows for bills combining military aid to Ukraine, Israel and Taiwan with the humanitarian aid for Gaza to be put forward for a final vote on Saturday. So what does it mean? First of all, it means that the war in Ukraine obviously will be prolonged for another year, maybe even more. I'm not sure about more because on the 21st of May, Zelensky loses his, let's say, legal power. He will be no longer, let's say, a legal president of Ukraine. So obviously after the 25th of May, there are going to be no agreements with him. At least most of the countries in the world will not recognize them. But until the 1st of May, Zelensky can sign a lot of agreements with the United States of America for additional help, which will allow them probably to survive for another year. On this, for example, video, you can see how the Blinken tried to convince Americans giving money to Ukraine is for their own good. So this is the situation. From the other side, Mike Johnson stated that Russia, China and Iran are the new axis of the evil. Speaker of the House of Representatives, Republican Mike Johnson, made this statement amid preparations for voting for project on assistance to Ukraine and Israel. From the other side, we see a report that the Pentagon is preparing to quickly approve a weapons package for Ukraine that includes urgently needed artillery and air defense as Congress lines up votes to pass additional funding for the country, according to two US officials. So this is the situation in the United States of America. Zelensky will receive everything he wants. Germany also will send additional air defense systems, so the Western countries are getting ready for another wave of escalation and probably also for another counteroffensive from the Ukrainian side. When talking about the situation on the ground, of course, the situation is not so good as the military package and so on. The MI6 transmitted new intelligence to the office of the President of Ukraine and the General Staff about the plans of the Russian army to introduce new 10 brigades into Ukraine by the end of May. For these purposes, heavy equipment is also being accumulated and assault groups with new weapons are also being prepared. If you remember, just yesterday we were talking about the video that was published, let's say, by the Russian sources, by the Russian Ministry of Defense, of production of significant number of another batch of 280 tanks. Obviously, these tanks are going to be a part of new 10 brigades that Russia will introduce on the territory of Ukraine. Currently, we can't tell for sure where exactly the Russians are planning to introduce new forces, but obviously we know for sure that if the situations continue developing the same way, even this year the Russians will start production and introducing on the line of combat contact the Russian tank Armata T-14, which probably may be the game changer in the special military operation, but without proper air defense or electronic warfare equipment, nothing can currently solve the situation and turn the situation in Ukraine in any favor. Now let's move to the situation on the ground. We have a lot of updates. The Russians continue bombing and attacking the, let's say, Ukrainian part of the shore of the Black Sea. A lot of explosions took place in Odessa area. Probably the Russians managed to get and destroy some ammo depots and warehouses, or probably some production of Navy drones that Ukrainians were planning to use to attack Crimea and the Black Sea. So some plans probably of Ukrainians were broken by the Russians, at least on this direction. Interesting details we continue receiving from Dnipro and Zaporozhye. Today we got more videos of Russian strikes in the area. This is Zaporozhye, this is Dnipro, and we can see on the video that significant number of Russian strikes, missile strikes, probably Iskander strike, maybe there were also Kinzhal strikes in the area of the town and the city, and these strikes took place, let's say, probably yesterday or the day before yesterday, so during the previous few days when the Russians were suppressing Ukraine air defense, airfields and so on. We see complete absence of air defense from the Ukrainian side, and this is probably one of the reasons of urgent military aid package to Ukraine. Furthermore, the sources reported that this morning on the 20th of April of the local time, the Russians continue bombing bombing and attacking Dnipro, and today the Russians also continue bombing and attacking the town by the name of Zaporozhye. Significant number of strikes. Probably today during the day we're going to receive some videos or photos confirming and showing us some results of those attacks. Now we're moving to South Donetsk direction to Novomykhailivka. As you can see, we have adjusted the map because according to some sources, the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, established complete control over Novomykhailivka. Yet we haven't received even a single photo or video confirmations, just reports from the reliable sources. But anyway, because of the fact that the sources are very reliable, we can make a conclusion that the Russians managed to establish complete control, and maybe today or tomorrow the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation will provide us additional information. And also today we got some video from the forces of 72nd Mechanized Brigade, that was 79th, let's say, Air Mobile Brigade, who was responsible during the previous past half year responsible for defense operation of Novomykhailivka. And today, let's say, by the day of the end of the, let's say, defense Novomykhailivka operation, they provided a very interesting video trying to show people what kind of duty they completed, they made, let's say, what kind of achievement they managed to achieve during the defense operation of Novomykhailivka. And the forces of 79th Brigade stated that during the previous half a year, the Ukrainians managed to destroy on this direction 314 armored vehicles, tanks, personnel carriers, different types of equipment on just Novomykhailivka direction. So for the previous 6 months, the Ukrainians destroyed 314 let's say, vehicles of the armed forces of Russian Federation. Probably that was the most bloodiest battle ever since the beginning of the special military operation. That was a very powerful stronghold that was under protection of one of the most experienced brigade of the armed forces of Ukraine. We're talking about 79th Air Assault Brigade. But probably and very likely the battle is about to be finished, and the town, Novomykhailivka, is about to be completely captured by the Russians, or maybe the town was already captured by the Russians. Anyway, we're going to receive this information today or maybe tomorrow. And then the Russians will move further to Konstantinovka and Ugledar. Now we are moving to Marinka direction. We have different updates from different mappers confirming additional Russian progress in the area. And according to information we have, confirmed by Deep State map and confirmed by different neutral mappers, the Russians, as a result of offensive operation during the previous few days, established control over the fields and the most important over this stronghold. So the Russians managed to bypass the Ukrainian defense belt and to enter the operational space, and even half encircle Georgievka from the east, southeast, and northeast. So the clashes and the storm operation in the direction continues. Pervomayska, we have additional reports from different sources. The different sources reported, including Syriac map, that and Deep State map, that the Russians managed to establish control over the fields. Deep State map, as you can see, shows this area as a gray zone. Most of the mappers, let's say neutral and pro-Russian mappers, shows this area as the area under Russian control. The sources reported that there are no more Ukrainian soldiers inside of the fields, that during the previous few days the Ukrainians managed to evacuate their forces from this, let's say, artillery pocket towards more reliable positions. So this means that most likely during the next few days this entire territory will be captured by the Russians, and this is going to be also very important achievement by the Russians, by the Russian side. Avdiivka direction, we continue receiving significant number of updates from Ocheretino itself. The Russians continue improving their positions in the southeastern part of the village. The pro-Ukrainian sources continue updating their maps in Russian favor, and also the sources reported that there was a very interesting case inside of Ocheretino. The Russians, as a result of FAB attack, managed to ruin almost the entire building, and the sources reported that there were Ukrainian soldiers of 115th Brigade under the ruins of that building, but currently there is no chances and no possibilities for Ukrainians to start evacuation process and to getting the soldiers under the ruins, and they are still there. So this situation is very critical, and of course it's not a very good thing. In New York, we see a certain Russian activity on this direction. If we increase the numbers of updates since the beginning of months, we see how the Russians were pretty focused in the southern part of New York and in the northern part of New York. The town, let's say after Krasnogorovka, probably the last defense belt stronghold of the armed forces of Ukraine that was created since the beginning of the 2014, when talking not about Donetsk, but when talking about, let's say, other front lines. So this is the last defense belt, and we see certain Russian activity. And today we got another geolocations, another video of how the Russians were bombing and attacking the territory with the use of cluster aviation bombs RBK 500. Significant number of strikes, significant damage the Russians managed to deal. So very likely, most likely, during the next 72 hours, the Russians will, of course, continue doing the same, and maybe will try to make first attempts to attack the territory from the south. Bakhmut, Artyomovsk direction, Chasov Yar. During the previous night, we haven't received anything from the direction, which confirms that maybe more or less the Ukrainians managed to stabilize the situation. The Russians still haven't entered the eastern part, and the clashes are taking place on the outskirts of the Ukrainian defense belt. Bilogorovka area, a few more videos we got from the direction. The Russians continued their offensive in direction of the landfill. Most of those attacks were repelled by the Ukrainians with the use of FPV drones. For now, no changes on the ground as well. South in Kupinsk direction, we have a small progress of the Russian forces towards Cerny. That was geolocated and confirmed by the Ukraine FPV drone strikes. So little bit slowly, step by step, the Russians continue moving, but very slow, and obviously this is not the results that the Russians can show to, let's say, to show that they can establish control over the Russian side of Zhiribets River. And the Russians, in the final, let's say, part of the video, the Russians published another video of how they managed to discover another Ukrainian concentration of forces, and as a result of Iskander strike, that concentration of forces were destroyed, probably with some ammo depots and warehouses inside of it. So as we can see, the situation is getting worse and worse. We see that after a very long pause, the Western countries decided to start sending the military package once again. Not just United States of America, Netherlands, Germany, every single European country will send additional help, which will prolong the Ukrainians, the regime of Zelensky, for another half a year or maybe more. But most likely this will not change this entire situation on the ground, and obviously even this military package will be spent by the Ukrainians and the Western countries, and sooner or later this package will be finished. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds you, we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.